Hello, Widowhood. Our guest today is Miss Stephanie Dawson. And I found her on Twitter because I wanted to know what a death doula was. And she is one. This conversation is so interesting. She drops some gold nuggets in here. Like, I'm going to give you one right now. She said that death becomes our friend that we take with us. I want you to hear how she talks about this.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. Our guest today is Miss Stephanie Dawson, a death doula. I believe I tracked her down on Twitter and reached out to her. And just the idea of a death doula, I didn't have a clue. But the more that I read about it, the more interesting it became. I know it's kind of morbid, but here we are. We're on a widowhood conversation. So, as you know, one of my intentions is to always have guests that are interesting. And I never heard of a death doula. So here we go. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I know that you're more than a death doula, so we won't start right there, but it is something that I do want to get into. So where are you from originally?
I Michigan until I was 6, and then I moved to Black Hills of South Dakota, and I grew up in Deadwood, South Dakota.
Those are two different places. How do we get, I mean, there's like,
Yeah.
how do we, like, what age? Like, how do we get to South Dakota from Michigan?
My mom was a hippie,
Oh,
and she went out. She went out to the Black Hills on vacation. She was a single parent. I was 6, and my sister was 1 at the time, and she fell in love with the Black Hills, and we moved there. So
okay.
up and moved us.
Wow. And
Yeah.
6 years old. So did you take on some of that hippie atmosphere, or where would you put yourself in the placement of that?
I think almost everything about me as an adult is directly related to my childhood. I'm a strong advocate for women's rights. I'm a strong advocate for people of all colors and dispositions. Um, I have a queer daughter, so I'm very active there, and rabid about the environment. So
Rabid. Okay. Well, so how does that show up in your everyday life being rabid about the environment?
always trying to lower my footprint, reusable silicone baggies and beeswax paper and um, bar shampoo and bar soap instead of the one that's partly water, laundry sheets. I used to make my own laundry soap, but my daughter never thought it worked as well. She didn't like it. So,
Okay. I
and
actually
now they have so
use
many ecological
magnets.
options for cheaper. You do what?
I have magnets that I have in my
Oh,
washing
cool.
machine. I found them on
Yeah.
Amazon, and I actually have balls that are made of wool or some material, and I use that in
Yeah.
the dryer. So
We have those too, the woolsies.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
My
my
grandsons like to steal them from my laundry when they're around. So it's a ball.
nice.
They're a boy. So
Yep,
yeah.
I can relate to that. My husband has a garden in the back, and he does his own compost. And it was interesting the other day, the trash went out, and we did not have much trash to go out. We have more recyclable, but most of the food products goes into the compost besides fruit and
Right.
meat. And we have a dog, so he's trying to make sure he gets everything else. So I never thought about being rabid for the environment, but I guess to some extent we are doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I use well, when I get grocery store bags, the little plastic ones, we have reusable grocery bags, but we always get some of the plastic because I use them for garbage. I don't buy garbage bags. I don't think I've bought
Oh,
garbage bags in 20 years.
Okay. I
So,
got you on that. We do have
and
garbage bags.
we recycle so much that it's not worth it. We don't have that much garbage.
Okay.
We have, a grocery store bag every other day, and it's just me and my daughter. So, we
Nice.
don't have all that much. But
Okay. So, how did we come from the 6-year-old to this woman that's a death doula? There's a lot of story in between there. How do you want to unpack some of that?
well, going back a little farther, even when I was 4, my sister died. I had a sister that died,
Mm,
and I think I told you that. So I grew up
yes.
in a grieving family, and my first memory of a funeral is my sister's. And I was 4, and she was a week away from turning 3 when she died, and we were dressed alike. And
Hold on. So first of all, I am sorry. That is a very young age. And thank you for sharing that. I know we may have talked about some things in the pre-conversation, but thank you for bringing that to this discussion. When you say you and your sister were dressed together at the time she died or at her funeral, Steph?
at her funeral, we had matching dresses. We were 14
Okay,
months apart, so we dressed alike often. And I'm sure they were our newest, best dresses. You know what I mean?
right.
So, but it's weird for a 4-year-old to be dressed as somebody I don't know, it was weird. It impacted me oddly. And I think at that point was when I knew that we could do it better. We could do
Okay.
death better.
At 4 years old, I mean, I'm 57 and I'm hearing that right now. And I know that isn't a present situation, but I'm just thinking, being that 4-year old child, what that does to you and just thinking about that. So, yeah, I can see how that started shifting your mind as far as how that could be done. Maybe that 4-year old Stephanie didn't have a concept of what to do, but you definitely knew it could look differently.
Right.
Wow.
I knew we could do better. And I also knew I wanted to be a nurse when I was 4. So,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, so yeah, I got my first little nurse's kit when I was 4, a little, it's a little plastic stethoscope and a little plastic bag that looks like crocodile. And
Hmm.
yeah,
I remember that my parents had that. I think the stethoscope was yellow, and the little pieces that went in our ears were blue. And we would go and
yeah,
check each other's heart and have like the little clear bag to do that. Yes, yes, I do
yes,
remember that. So where did
yeah.
we go from 4-year old Stephanie?
Well, I got married at 18, had my daughter at 19, and then my son at 22. By the time I was 23, I was divorced with 2 little kids.
Mm,
Um, I got married again when I was 24, and I worked at the battered women's shelter. I went there like first as a client, came back later as a volunteer. They liked me so much as a volunteer, they gave me a job in the office without a college degree at all. And so I did that. And but I always wanted to be a nurse since I was 4, always wanted to be a nurse. So until I was 27, I worked in the shelter. And then when I was 27, I took a job as church secretary. I moved to Minnesota with my then husband. And um, I worked at the bar on my weekends and during at the church during the week. And I had one lady
that's
who
a
used to
hoot.
call me. I know, I know. I had one parishioner who used to call me sometimes at the office, and I often saw her at the bar too. And she would call me sometimes at the church office and say, "Which one are you today, my church secretary or my bartender?" And I'd say, "What do you need?" And she'd say, "I heard a really good joke." I'd say, "Well, then I'm your bartender."
Okay.
I don't care if I'm in the church office. I got to hear this joke.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, yeah. And then I went to work as a nursing assistant. I quit both of those jobs to go work as a nursing assistant and see if my body could handle being a
Mm,
nurse because I had the
okay.
back surgery when I was a kid. So yeah, so I worked as a nursing assistant, and then a year later I went to nursing school and I graduated from nursing school when I was
Wow.
31, 30. Yeah, 30. My kids
Okay.
were 11 and 8 when I graduated from nursing school.
Do you mind
So
if we pause right there? I have a few questions if you're
that's
willing
okay.
to.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you for that timeline. Um, in the concept of this conversation, you and I both know that grief extends past and beyond the loss of a loved one. When you were talking about the divorce at a young age, Do you um, consider any type of grief that you dealt with in life regarding that?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Can you share a little bit
Yeah.
about that or how that
Sure.
looks for you?
Yeah, because I do work with people in grief that way, just because divorce is a huge, you can grieve a career change, and I did.
Yes.
You can grieve divorce, and I did. I've had clients who grieved over their trans child because they love their childhood, whoever, whatever shape that child is in, but you're still going to grieve the child that you gave birth to. You know,
Okay. Yes.
it doesn't mean anything bad. It's not anything negative. It's just a grieving process. And we
Yes.
get through it and we move on, so that's all the same thing to me. It's, yeah. So I grieved, and I was 18 when I got married, and we were married 3.5 years. I think we lived in the same house 8 months. He was in the
Mm.
service, and one of us had to grow up because I got pregnant, and he didn't want to. He wasn't
Okay.
ready. Shoot, we're
Mm.
55. I don't think he's ready yet. you know?
Yes, I know. I can understand that maturity does come differently for different people. And when you
Yeah.
have little people to take care of, it changes what your priorities are. It changes what becomes important. And you made a choice to start taking care of these little human beings that you made.
Yeah. Years I volunteered at school. I was Thursday classroom mommy, and I worked in parents and education and taught the precursor to DARE. It was called Project Charlie. And I
Okay.
taught that at my daughter's kindergarten, and I coached soccer.
Oh,
So
okay.
I kept pretty active in when they were little.
Nice. Wow. And so now,
Yeah.
and
You're
so
freezing a
you,
little bit. I know I might be two here, so we'll see. I know it's storming on both ends for us.
okay. Stephanie, thank you for being willing to talk about the impact of the divorce. If you wouldn't mind, you also spoke about a couple of other different types of grief as far as the career change. And I think in this day and time that we live in, you as a parent to be able to talk to it from your perspective, as you mentioned about people dealing with grief or expectations with a trans child or different set than what their expectations were. I'll just leave that open to how that can go, if that's fair enough.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Well, that's kind of the same grief that you have from a divorce. You've got expectations that you're going to live the rest of your life with somebody, and that they're going to love and cherish you, and you're going to love and cherish them. And that doesn't always happen,
Hmm.
It just it doesn't. And maybe you love for a while and then it gets bad. And maybe they're not the person that you thought they were. It's hard to say, but something happens and that ends. And then that's a form of grief, because you have to adjust to a different lifestyle, a life different than the one you planned on
Hmm.
having. So, yeah, it's a change.
That is really good to make that the idea that something you thought was going to happen ends and you have to make that change. That really is the very basic of what grief looks like. Obviously, what changes is different in every scenario, whether not it is a spouse that dies, a child that dies, um, a pet, an expectation of a job, but it is the coming to terms with what has ended and how do I continue life in the absence of what is no longer here. Obviously, that gravity of it and how it impacts us is going to vary depending on what it is that has ended or who, unfortunately, has ended. But I never thought of it, say, in such a simplistic form. But you can take that statement and place it with just about anything that ends. I mean, obviously, if you got in a car wreck and the car is total, but you're fine, you get another car. There's a little bit of grief there. You said you got this whole car payment thing you need to do, and you got to start this over, find something. But then you have a spouse that dies. It's ended, and that process is so much more complex but it is
Yeah.
still the same uh, basic construct, I guess I'll say. But
Yeah.
wow, thank you for that.
Yeah. I was talking, I have this thing that I wrote. I haven't posted, I haven't published it yet, but I'm just going to give you a little excerpt from it. But I do have a Substack and I write on there sometimes just random thoughts about death and grief. But grief initially is like being left alone at the bottom of a hiking trail that you've never been to at nighttime. You don't know what's out there. You don't know where you are. You don't know how to find your way to the end of the trail, but you know you've got to get there. But you're in the
Mm,
dark. You've never been here. You have no idea where to go. If you're lucky, a friend who's been on that trail before shows up with a flashlight and snacks. But if you're not lucky, you just got to stumble around in the dark until you find your way out. But usually, those of us that stumbled around in the dark to find our way out are the ones that come back with the flashlight and snacks because we know.
girl, we got a whole rope like we lassoing somebody and bringing them on.
That's right. There's so many of us now. The death and grief movement is beautiful. I have
Really?
seen some of the most astounding people that I'm so impressed are in the world, and then that I know them. You know, there's so
Okay.
many beautiful souls out there doing this. Now, death work has been around for a long time. There was always that neighborhood lady that showed up when somebody in your family was dying, and she sat at the bedside and she gave comfort to the family and she told people what to expect and she put ice chips into the dying person's mouth and she fluffed their pillow, and at the end she washed that body and sat with the family and grieved. And sometimes she got paid, sometimes she got maybe a chicken, sometimes she went home with some eggs, you know. There was
Yes.
always that neighborhood lady. We don't have those neighborhood ladies anymore. We've lost our neighborhoods. We've lost those communities. So you got to pay somebody to do what used to always just happen.
And you
They were there
say
for birth
that,
too.
yeah, because the whole concept of death taking place in the home that
Yeah,
shifted. So that impact of what that looked like, that shift also, the need for the neighborhood lady to be able to show up because it shifted into a more commercialized setting, and that
right.
changes the dynamics of things.
It does. And you can go, you know, you can go full, you can go full on alternative deaths to like back to where they were 150 years ago, where
Hmm.
you don't use a mortician and you don't use a funeral home. You use an alternative method and bury them in a silk or linen shroud in a natural cemetery, you know. Um, there's thousands of different options. Now there's water cremation, there's just different ways to do it that are so different from everything we've ever been taught, you know, like with miles and miles of cemeteries instead of just a forest of gently decaying bodies covered in mushrooms and flowers, you know, or having somebody turned into a tree and having a tree in your yard forever that was once Uncle Hal, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's just a lot of different options that way. And you know, everybody is different and has to make their own decisions. And you know, I feel like even as like I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit here, but
No, no, go
like
for
when
it.
my son died, like being a death doula, and well, before that I was a nurse, and that's a different kind of grief again because I got injured on the job in 2009, and I've always had a bad back, and in 2009 I injured my hips, my SI joints on the job, and then I developed ankylosing spondylitis. So it's I had to retire from nursing when I was 42, and I was not ready to retire from nursing, and I didn't. It's kind of at my wits' end, and I was brokenhearted. Wanted to be a nurse all my life. It's all I ever wanted to do, and I didn't. I didn't know who I was without being a nurse. I had no concept of Stephanie as a person without being KK and David's mom and being a nurse. I didn't have one. And then I was at my wits' end and I didn't know what to do. And I wrote for a little while for a job and edited. And then I went back to school for nursing home administration. I thought, if I can't be a nurse, I can be the boss, you know, not realizing that my health is never going to be good enough to work 40 hours a week. It just isn't. Can't
Okay.
be helped. So, and I ran out of money. And then I learned about death doulas and I went, how is this a thing? And no one ever told me. This is a
You're like,
job
never.
made for me. Yeah. And so I went to training, I think in 2018.
Okay.
I went back to Michigan to where I was born. I went to
Okay.
Ann Arbor, Michigan. So for training.
And so, wow. Okay. So, what made you select that
Yeah.
location for your training?
I looked at a few different ones and they're all beautiful, amazing people. I think part of it was that they were in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And my sister at the time was in Michigan and I thought I could go see her. And I just liked everything that they said, you know, following them on social media and looking at everything that they posted. I was like, yeah, these are my people. But
Mm.
then as I get to know more and more people that teach death doula training, they're all my people. You know what I mean? They all are. So, and
So, you,
some of the people that I went to training with, I still consider friends, and
oh,
I don't talk to
nice.
them very often, but we celebrate each other's successes, and I see them on social media, and it's an intense training. Oh, it's 3 days, and it's intense. It's a lot of feelings come out, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us go into the work because we've had a bad death experience, and we want to make
Okay.
it better.
Mm.
And
Couple of
even
questions.
being a nurse and working in oh, sorry.
No,
Yep.
no, no. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
Working in
no,
nursing.
yeah, I spent most of my nursing career in long-term care and hospice, and you the dying are so often alone because you don't always have the staff to sit with them and hold their hands. And sometimes I even did it off the clock because I didn't want people to be alone. And I, sit and sing and pray and hold their hand or whatever. Um, there just isn't always the staffing for that. And it's better now. The hospice movement, this was a while ago, but the hospice movement was just starting to get big then, and it has grown exponentially, and that is much better where you can just call somebody and they do have people to come sit, and that does help. But it can be very lonely dying in a nursing home.
Mm.
There just isn't the staff. There's too much to do and too little money and too little time.
Mm, mm, mm. When you think of your life working in hospice and your life as working in a death doula field, how are they similar or different?
Well, being a doula, there's no medical. So you're
Mhm.
not administering morphine, you're not treating bed sores, you're not, or preventing bed sores. You mean you can always prevent bed sores, you can always, but there's as many different types of doulas almost as there are people, I think. I
Hmm.
think everyone varies on what they're willing to do. Some people are very willing and able to get right in there and do hands-on care. They'll help you reposition, they'll fluff their pillows. There's other people that will like hold your hand, but they won't touch it, anything else. You know, um, there's me, like I have physical limitations. I don't help other than fluffing a pillow and holding a hand because I can't, you know.
Okay.
Um, and there's people that will come to your house and clean it, and they're still a death doula. That's what they do, but they're cleaning your house so you can hold your mom's hand while she's dying.
Mm.
Then there's people
Okay.
that just answer questions. I've had doula clients online through the pandemic. Um, sorry, that's what I call it because it's a bad habit.
No, no,
Um,
no. I was going to ask you, how were you able to support people? So thank you for rolling into that.
yeah, most through phone calls and video and um, constant texting. You know, I did. I had a friend whose mom was dying in New York, and I'm in Minnesota, and I offered to set her up with a doula there, and she was like, "No, I know you, and this is good enough." So
So
you
what
do what
was
you can.
right? Um, when you thought about the training in this regards to becoming a deaf doula, what did that look like compared to what you thought it would be?
I think the spiritual, holistic aspects can't really be visualized until you're actually doing it.
Okay.
When you have a thanatology choir come in and sing as if they were singing at someone's deathbed side, and we had one of our classmates lay down as if she was the dying one, and we all sang to her, and we bawled, just bawled. Oh my goodness, that was so emotional. And you get into small groups and you work through things like what your priorities are in life, and you narrow down like your 6 like things that you want at the end of your life, what's important to you to have there. And all of that is so helpful. I mean, it's very emotional and hard at the time because it's so condensed, because it has to be. But then later when you're expanding your own practice, it's a tool, and you can use it to help people figure out what their own priorities are
Mm.
and what's important to them at the end of their lives. And um women our age are facing, and men our age are facing the death of spouses and facing the death of parents. And it's one more responsibility on an already overworked group, but it's also a once in a lifetime chance, I guess, to really be there and to be with somebody and give them peace during the most painful time in their life is a great, great gift.
Mm.
We're not always, it's an act of service, but it's an act of gratitude for life and everything that it has. Does that make sense?
It does. I want to circle back to something. You
Okay.
mentioned about in the training identifying what is important at the end of someone's life. How is that relevant or important in the process of your services as a deaf doula for someone to come to terms with that?
Well, a lot of times people haven't maybe talked to a sibling in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, because they've had a falling out. At the end of your life, do you want them there? Do you want to kiss and make up? Do you want your family in and out? Do you want friends in and out? Do you want your pastor? What would comfort you in what's too much noise? Do you want a thanatology choir to come in and sing to you as you die? Do you want your family surrounding you? Um, and then, if you go into different types of training from there to jump off, and you can also help with end of life caretaking decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And like if people want feeding tubes and if they want what end of life measures they want and don't want. But that's a class beyond the doula class, but it all leads into there.
Okay.
And I did take that class, and I from one of my death doula instructors, I took her advanced or end of life certification class, and like end of life care plan facilitator is what it's called. Sorry. And um, I used my mom for practice. And then a year later, my mom suddenly got sick and died. And I was so grateful
Mm.
that I had done that, that because my mom and I didn't always get along. We were not close. And, but I knew what she wanted. And my sister called me and she was like, Mom's really sick. I need you here. I need you in South Dakota now, yesterday. Get here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the nurse. My sister takes care of the business end. She's business minded. I'm the compassionate, you know what I mean?
Right.
We've always had clear roles in our family. And she said, You're the nurse. You have to get here.
Okay.
I said, Okay. So, but I knew what she wanted from doing all that. And it made it a lot easier. And she was surrounded by her. And I didn't really think about it that way, but her best friend was with us and in the room when my mom was dying. And she said, every time you read, she died surrounded by friends and family. This is what I always picture. And I think we were all making a joke. It's like my daughter and my sister's kids, the cousins joking around while their nana is dying, just trying to lighten
Right.
the mood for a second. So yeah.
Wow.
She wasn't always a great mom, but she was a good nana. She
Okay.
really was.
Grandparent life is different than parenting life.
It really is. You've learned so much.
And you learn so much, you're older. And in that learning, you have a different sense of how things will work out eventually, more often than not.
Right.
Instead
Right.
of when you're that parent, you are trying to make it happen. You are trying to buffer the good and the bad and allow your child to be on a road to success. We are half navigating the car that it's like two people trying to fight for the steering wheel of the car. And it's like, just go ahead, just do what you want to do with it. But
Exactly.
you're trying to do that. But wow, the awesomeness of every conversation that you had with your mom under the vise of training became a real life application. I know you've
Right.
talked a little bit around different things, but let's have a conversation with someone that just goes, "You're a deaf doula? What is that?"
Right. Okay. Well, a death doula in its most basic form is education and support at the end of life. We can tell you like signs of impending death when they're getting close, when you want to call other people to come, you know, when you want to go to when it's okay to go to the movies and maybe you shouldn't leave the house, that kind of thing. We can help with that a little bit. But then there's people who are really private in death and they won't die until they're left alone for a minute. So it's hard to say. But yeah, it's basically support in whatever way you want to be supported. And we will work that out with you how best to make your life easier, the
Oh,
dying and the dying person's loved one.
mm.
So
What are some of those signs you mentioned about what does that look like when you say signs? People are
if,
thinking someone's
if
here, then
somebody's
they're not.
dying, yeah, if somebody's dying from like say cancer or old age or like any disease process, often there'll be a skin change at the end of life. It's called mottling. They
Okay.
get kind of grayish, greenish blue spots on the end of legs. I believe in people of color, it often gets very ashy and almost white, and they're
Okay.
cool to the touch. Where the rest of the skin might be warm, those spots are cool.
Okay.
And it's a circulation change as circulation is starting to leave the body. There's often a pattern of breathing changes, and they call it a death rattle, which I don't think it sounds like a rattle at all. It just sounds like a heaviness of this might be the last one. That's what I think it sounds like. Is this might be my last one where they're not sure if they're going to breathe again.
Well, from a trained
And
ear perspective, that is much
yeah,
different than
they're
someone
letting go.
then
Yeah,
that person that's in the room, they're engulfed with emotions, this person and everything else. Their recall of that is very different and to be able to assess the situation. So thank you for
right.
that clarity.
Yeah, and there's often in the days beforehand there's a lack of desire to eat and drink anything, and then you need to keep the mouth moist for comfort
Why does one generally have a lack of desire for food or eating?
because your body's shutting down. You don't have a need for food anymore
Okay.
because your body's processes that take care of food for you are no longer working. So you don't have food is fuel. It's what keeps us alive. If your
Hmm.
body is checking out, you don't need fuel. You don't put gas in a broken down car, you know?
Thank you for explaining that. I've been in situations where people were not aware of that. So now there becomes tension between the loved one and the facility or the medical staff about why.
They're letting my mom starve.
Yes, and so there we go. Can you unpack that a little bit and kind of
Yeah.
educate people because you already know where I'm going with that.
Yeah. Well, they're dying and they don't have a need for food and they're not hungry. You can force them to eat and force to keep them alive, but then aren't you robbing them of some of that dignity from just letting them go when their body's ready to go?
And can
We
they
keep them
actually
alive for
digest it?
hours. Yeah, it doesn't always digest. Sometimes they can get pneumonia from it. They aspirate, and is it good to die being poked and prodded and poked full of holes because we are not ready to say goodbye? Because we're never going to be ready. We are
Never.
never going to be ready. You are never going to look at somebody you love and say, check you on the other side, dude. It's never going to happen.
No.
We want them to stay, but we don't want them to stay in the shape that they're in. We don't. And people say that about my son. Oh, don't you have regrets about, couldn't you have kept him alive? Why? His body was in so much pain. No, I don't want him here like that. I don't want him here sick and miserable. I miss
So
him
let
every day. It doesn't mean I want him back the way that he was,
and your son's name.
David.
And let's talk about David a little bit, if you would, if that's
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Um, he was the bestest boy. He was. His son, his son was 7 months old when he died. He has
Mm.
three daughters that are older. They're now 12, 9, and 6. And his son is now 4. But his son is a miniature him. Just as hyper, just as off the wall, still has the mad love for Spider-Man and the Hulk and the color green and dinosaurs, and anything with a motor that can make him go faster than he should be going. Yeah. So it's so funny. And I said something to my daughter-in-law about that when I got there the other day, and she said, when I met him was after years and years of being on meds for ADD and going through therapy. And she said, I never saw this in the raw. Said, yeah. Yeah. He was a lot. But he was born with a defective heart. When he was 12, I took him in for a football physical, and his blood pressure was 190 over 110.
Oh my.
On a healthy 12-year-old boy, or we thought healthy. And so we went right from the football physical to pediatric intensive care, and we were there for 2 weeks. Usually, if a child has unspecified very high hypertension, there's a renal tumor somewhere. Somewhere in those kidneys, you're going to find something bad. Went through every test in the book. They were so thorough. They couldn't find anything. And put him on blood pressure medication, 2 different ones. And 2 months later, we were back because he was in 7th grade and he didn't want to be sick. And he thought if he took medication, that meant he was sick. And so we went back for another 2 weeks, and he lived as long as he possibly could, but they told him when he was, what eventually found was that his heart valves were actually too small. Okay. And his heart was enlarged. I always said David had a heart as big as Texas, and he really did. His heart was actually enlarged, and his valves were too small. So they weren't capable of pushing enough blood in there.
Okay.
So they told me when he was 12 or 13, in this whole mess here, that he'd probably never live to be an adult because his heart wouldn't support an adult body. And when he was 19 or so, he met Carrie, his widow, and fell in love, and they had 4 kids, and they had they had a marriage of struggles because they were young and they had 4 kids, but they loved each other very much. Yeah. And but they loved each other very much, and he died. He was supposed to have open heart surgery, and he delayed it until summertime, and he wanted to be home when his girls were home from school and recover with them around so they could play video games and stuff.
Okay.
And he worked in a freezer. He did things that were not good for somebody with a heart condition. He drank energy drinks. He lived hard, and drank too much. He had ADD and bipolar, and he self-medicated, a little bit. And a lot of times when people are young men in their 20s and they've been on ADD meds for 10 years, perfectly well-meaning doctors will say, oh, you're just going to sell those and take them off, and they need them. They need them to feel like they belong.
Oh, you mean take them off of the medication?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was on 3 different heart medications, but couldn't get anything for his ADD, So his mind was always going. And if you already have high blood pressure and you're running 90 miles an hour just to slow your brain down, it's not a good combination. The night before he died, he went running in the snow and cold. He died on January 5th, and he went out jogging in the snow and cold. And yeah. So the next thing I knew, the police knocked on my door because I wasn't answering my phone because my phone rang from a number that I didn't know at 4:35 in the morning. And they said that there'd been something with my son. I don't remember what they said exactly, but I grabbed my shoes. And I started putting on my shoes. And he ever so gently put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, ma'am, you don't need shoes. There's no rush. And I knew. And I said, well, what do I do? And he said, well, can you take your grandkids? And I said, I can. So they brought me my 4 grandbabies at 5:00 in the morning. And I had to stay with them all day until their mom got home. And, she didn't want me to tell them without her, and I didn't want to tell them without her, So they kept saying, when are mom and dad coming? When are mom and dad coming? And yeah.
How old was David when he died, Stephanie?
29.
29. And what year was it?
2020. I said the world loved David so much that when he died, it all fell apart.
Hmm.
Because then the pandemic started in March.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. How is your perspective? You mentioned it briefly about the death doula and Stephanie the mom and reconciling that.
I jumped right into my death groups for help. And I said, I know how to do this from the other end. I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea how to do this. And everybody kept saying, yeah, you do. You can handle this. Yeah, you do. And I did it. I think we talked about that just a little bit about whether or not you're blessed with support. And
Yes.
I was not.
Hmm.
So that's when I took grief coaching classes and I became the support I needed because I did not find it. I joined a girl that I worked with um, at the VA when I was a nurse, actually. She had lost a child and she invited me to a parent loss support group. And I noticed by the third day that I was in there, I was doing way more giving of support and advice than I was getting any. So I still felt like I was lost and floundering. I was on that dark trip. I was on that dark path. And I had my daughter and my daughter-in-law and my 4 grandchildren for a literal lifeline. It's all I could do was hang on until I found my way out. And then I took the grief coaching classes, and then my mom went and died. Can you believe it? She died in November of 2021.
Mm.
So, yeah. So I actually took a break from all my classes then for like 6 months. And I actually finished my certification for grief coaching and counseling last May.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thanks.
And how
So,
would you
yeah,
say grief coaching is different from the role you facilitate for people in the death doula?
honestly, I've started calling myself, in addition to a death doula, I also call myself a death coach
Okay.
because with the coaching training, it's so much the same. It's education and support for wherever people are on their journey. You have to meet them where they're at. And there are people that really don't need my services. They're so mentally healthy that they don't need me.
Hmm.
But for the people that are in the dark on that trail, I'll show up with a flashlight and bring snacks.
I love to
And if
bring
not, I'll just sit
snacks.
there on the trail with you. Yeah, you got to have a bottle of water.
But the reason why also I love that it's so hard to eat when you're in the that on the road and don't know where to go. Your mind is foggy.
I
You
couldn't.
can't figure out where to go. And it's like if someone just had like a little piece of cheese or something because your brain is trying to comprehend what is taking place. So to find someone on that road trying to get up and I've gone hiking, retired from the Army 21 years. Most of my hiking experiences are not pleasurable, but I can think of going up this hill and trying to navigate the loose rocks, not knowing where to place your foot, grabbing a branch that feels like it's going to hold you. You slip and you have to get to the top of that. And to
Yeah,
have someone to come along and help navigate that. But back to the part you were saying that in that you were giving more than you were receiving, but also knowing how important community is. When people are trying to do this and they say they don't need anybody, what would you say to a statement like that?
don't you though? Because we're here. And I actually have a support group on Sundays, and I belong to a group called Gen X Left of the Dial on Facebook, and um,
Repeat that again is what?
Gen X Left of the Dial, so
Okay.
left leaning politically people from Gen X, and um, there were a few of us with major losses, and the groups really became big during the pandemic because we were all at home with nothing to do.
Okay.
And one of them, I went through her mom's death with her, and she said, we should start a support group. And I said, we could do that. And then once we started the group on Facebook, I said, let's open up a grief chat. Let's just have a meeting once a week. And we don't always talk about death. We
Mm-hmm.
talk about dating, like especially after being widowed or divorced. We talk about school. We talk about work. We talk about and sometimes we talk about death. And sometimes we
Yes.
talk about grief. It's whatever you need that day.
Mm-hmm.
We're here. And that's what I was saying. We're here. You can talk or you can not talk. If you want me to just sit here next to you in the dark, I'll do that. I'm
Mm.
comfortable in the dark. Dark doesn't scare me anymore. But the craziest thing about grief is you can find your way out of that trail and get to the other side. And a year later, you're halfway back on that mountain and you don't know how you got there. Just some little thing can trigger you. And there you are. There you are out there in the dark again. And you're like, what the crap?
Look,
I made it through this. And you didn't, though, because the love is still there. The love doesn't die. That doesn't go anywhere. So as long as that love exists, that pain is going to come back and bite you. And that
you
love is going to last as long as we last.
you are so right. One of my favorite movies is The Matrix. I don't know if you saw the first one.
Yeah, I've seen the first one.
And what you described sound like Neo in the train station where he was trying to figure out, how to get around this. He runs out really quick and boom, he's right back in the same
Yeah.
train station and he thought he just found his way out of. And
Yes.
not until his friends came did he get out and they rescued him and they went through everything to get there for him. And the thing about grief that you talk about, it doesn't go away, but I do think it changes. The trigger
Yeah.
that would have knocked me out for 3 weeks the first year that my husband died, 6 years later becomes where I go, okay, you see that coming. So let's just get the photo albums out now. Let's just
Right.
embrace and lean into this emotional wave that's coming because I cannot avoid it. And I think I expend more energy trying to divert it than just accepting this is what love looks like when it's ended, that life has ended. Back to that
Right.
that you made in the beginning, that what it takes for us to try to do that. I think people, what would you say to this statement where someone says they're dead? Why do you keep looking at those photo albums? Why do you keep talking about them? Why don't you just move on?
Have you moved on from the people that are living in your life? If your children that are alive still, have you moved on from them? You don't. It's not weird to you raised them, or if you're married, you're with them day in, day out in intimate moments. You know what they sound like on the worst day when they feel like crap, and you know the sound that they make when they're super happy. You know them. You know everything about them, and that hole in your heart is shaped like them. And
Mm,
it's big. I always call it like a cavern, like I can't I used to always, when people would ask me how I was like, I can't believe I'm not bleeding. I hurt so bad I can't believe I'm not just gushing out blood everywhere, because this is ridiculous, an insane amount of pain. But it does change. It gets not smaller because the love is still there, but you become friends with it and you
mm.
just bring it with you. You bring it with you. Come on, pain. We're going for a walk. You might as well get along and play checkers, whatever you got to do. But you don't. And if you don't know what it's like to hurt so bad for the rest of your life, I hope you never do. But that's the price that we pay for love, and it's worth it. So worth it. I don't, I never got angry at David that David died. I never got angry at God that David died. I never did. And I, I thank God every day for letting me be David's mom for as long as I had him. And then I pray for mercy on his soul from when he was naughty. But we make jokes about it now. Like my daughter and I, they came out with Mountain Dew 4 Loco and they made a live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. And I was like, oh, your brother's just so mad that he's missing this. Oh my goodness. And we made a joke one day about leaving the house and our house burning down. And I said, I would like your brother's ashes out of it first. And she said, they'll still be in there.
Oh my gosh. But I love, and that's a point that we get to laugh about stuff. It
Yeah,
doesn't all it's not always sad. And sometimes it's a little dark and morbid. It is what it is
it
because
is.
when you make friends with it, I like that term. That it's like come along with me because I'm still alive. And the
Yeah.
question I want to ask you, how have you learned to embrace life and the continuance of death?
I think it's a big period of personal growth because I think I've seen a lot of things that I would have liked to have done differently, but I've also seen a lot of things that I did really well, you know?
Mm.
Like even looking back, I posted a picture to Twitter. Yet I still call it Twitter. It's always going to be Twitter. Yesterday or the day before of me and my son leaving the gym the year before he died. And that was, he was married and had 4 kids. He was a busy guy. Well, at that time, I think he had 3 kids, but he had a job. He was going to college. He was busy. But on Fridays, we tried to go to the gym together. That was our thing. And every once in a while, we'd have a lunch date. And I'd always say, I have a lunch date with a very handsome and much younger man. And people would say, yeah, tell David we said hi. I was like, I could have a date with a handsome guy.
Of
But
course, of course.
yeah, there was so much joy to being his mom, even as an adult. I know that I did something right, that we stayed close as adults. When
Hmm.
your grown kids want you around, you did something right. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or not,
You
but
did.
okay, good.
If a person came to you and they made a statement to the extent that, am I grieving? Is it okay if I'm laughing and I'm happy? Or am I supposed to equate my sadness to my love and that grief looks like that always?
I don't think there's anybody who dies and wants you to be sad. They don't. Life is meant to be lived forwards, and that's what you have to do. You move on with what you've learned, and you carry your love and your pain with you, and it's who you are. This is who you are now. Um, Maybe a little bit more compassionate, maybe a little bit more less apt to judge people in similar situations. Just for an example, I think my daughter-in-law thought I would be mad at her for being in a new relationship, and I was like, no, honey, if you are young and beautiful with 4 small children, if you are lucky enough to find love again, yay, yay. I'm so happy for you, you know? And I am. And I tell my grandkids that I say, he's my family, you know? He's not my son. He's not ever going to be my son-in-law, but he's my family because he lives with my grandkids and he's my daughter-in-law's partner. So he may
Mm.
not be related to me, but he's my family. And their child is my family. He's not my grandson, but he's my family. He calls me Bama just like my grandkids do. So,
Oh, you bring up a really good question now, Stephanie.
yeah.
For a parent that is struggling, that their child is deceased and that remaining spouse is continuing to live. What would advice would you give someone that came to you and they said they were struggling with that?
It is hard. There's no way it's not going to be hard. But still having that person in your life, and it can get difficult. It really can. I mean, it can get so difficult that they actually write laws about it, like for grandparents' rights and stuff.
Mm.
Um, it can be difficult. I think um, I I up and moved next door to them early in their married life and babysat all the time, and I think that helps now because I still baby. I just came back from the weekend from babysitting, and we had all 5 kids, and my daughter and I can't do it without her because I can't lift even the baby. He's too heavy for me at this point. But their son together is 15 months old, I think,
Okay.
so maybe 16. But a toddler. He's starting to toddle, but he's still a baby. But I can see that it would be hard, and I can see that people are maybe going to judge. Oh, he's nothing like my son was, or she's nothing like my daughter was. Well, no, no, she's not going to. You can't replace somebody who's gone. You
Right.
can't just go out and get a new one. if you're a parent who loses a child, you can't give birth to another child to replace that dead one. You can't do it. It's the same thing. It needs to be, I think it has to mentally be enough different for you to adjust to it. And I don't know because I married very badly. So I don't really know. Um, yeah, that's not a skill that I possess. I passed it on apparently to my son, but
But it sounds as if
yeah,
you chose to love what was available to love. You chose to love
yeah,
those grandchildren because David
yeah,
was no longer here, but you could extend that love to those children, and you could extend the love to the woman that you know David loved. It wasn't her fault.
right, yeah,
And that's what
yeah.
I
You,
hear you
I
saying,
always
that
will
you
choose
you
love.
choose
Yeah,
you choose to. And what I also hear you saying is, in choosing to live, that death is a part of living, and that is inevitable in every aspect for all of us. So embracing that reality, you're choosing to continue loving while you have the breath to do that.
when I came out of my grief coma, I call it, but my grief shell, the reason I did it is because I had a dream that I was talking to my son, and I know I'm going to see him again someday. We're going to
Mm,
hang out, we're going to chat, and I'm going to tell him about everything that I did after he left. And I'm going to show him how great it was, how I didn't just survive, but I thrived. And I turned all my pain into something beautiful because that's what I do.
that's
My
that's
whole
so
goal of my whole
intentional.
life.
That's making some choices there. That is just not letting life happen to you. You are choosing to impact what life gives you.
Yes. My mantra is kind of if life throws you in a hole and you manage to climb out of that hole, you have a moral imperative to throw a rope back for the next person.
So, what would you say to the person that is stuck in a
Mhm.
place of grief that they don't feel like even everybody's throwing ropes and they just don't even have the energy to grab that rope and to get out? They are just there.
I'd climb down in the hole and sit with them. I told you I'm not scared of the dark anymore. You look for glimmers. You look for I've been seeing a lot about glimmers, and it's funny to me because I didn't call them that, but I've talked about them for as long as I can remember. But those little sparks of joy, um the way a perfectly done hamburger tastes when you take that first bite of it.
Is it bacon on the hamburger? I just want to make
Is there
sure.
there's bacon.
Okay,
There's
okay.
bacon.
Woo, child, yes. So I see
Yeah.
a slightly
Um,
toasted like potato bun. I'm sorry, not.
oh
Go ahead.
yeah, yep. Red onion.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. A really good hamburger tastes really good. To hear a little kid laugh about anything, it's like their toes, you know, there's a moment of joy for you. Just run into one of your best high school friends who brings up something that you did that made them laugh 20 years ago, Remember this time that, oh my goodness, that girl that killed me, whatever. Just little, you grab a spark,
Okay.
a really well written book, a a well crafted Twitter story, just whatever you can grab that little spark and hang on to it. The Bible talks about mustard seeds,
Yes.
and if the faith the size of a little tiny mustard seed can move a whole dang mountain, then a spark of joy this big can get me through today.
Like piercing that darkness and
Yeah,
being able to accept it, being able to receive it, that happens because grief is hard. I will not even
oh
try
yeah,
to diminish um, what that looks like, but it does not have to hold us captive. That
right,
grief
exactly.
can transition into celebration. It can transition into memories. I don't know how it happens, but I know that it can. I have seen it for myself and other people. And it still pulls at your heart, but it is possible. It is
Yeah.
possible to transcend that. Um, I know I've
I just want
asked,
to say,
I was just
oh,
gonna,
I just
no,
wanted to
no,
say
I
one
was
more
just gonna
thing on
say,
that topic.
oh, go
Sorry.
ahead.
The main thing I tell people when they're stuck is to go volunteer somewhere.
Oh, okay. And why is that?
Um, because acts of service change your whole mainframe. We are designed as human beings for making another person feel good to make us feel better. That's
Huh.
the way our brain is designed. People say, oh, you just do nice things for yourself. Yeah, we all do. It's not the only reason. You can have altruistic reasons, but yes, it increases your dopamine. And if you don't have enough dopamine and you have to get it from a store, people do, store-bought dopamine is okay. And you can also get it by
In
doing something nice
moderation.
for
You don't want to
somebody else.
overkill on that. Go ahead.
Right, right. Don't buy too much of
Okay.
that stuff in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
store. And make sure it's the
Just a
quality stuff.
disclaimer. Okay, okay.
Yeah, you have to, if you can get out of your own head to be a blessing to someone else, you're gonna, it helps. Even
Mm.
if you're doing it anonymously. I had a friend that went and paid off lunch tickets at her child's school. I know someone who buys a birthday cake every year at the grocery store on her dead son's birthday. And she leaves it for the next family that comes in for a birthday cake. She pays for it. I myself, with my grandkids, and I encourage other people to do this too, but birthday cake boxes where you can just take like a cake mix and a can of soda in case they don't have eggs and oil. Because people that are poor and getting food from a food shelf don't always have eggs and oil. Um, so you take a can of soda and a cake mix and a can of frosting and some candles and put it an aluminum throwaway pan, cover the whole thing in cellophane. You can do like 6 of them for $20
Okay. I did not
and
know
give a,
that you can make a cake like that.
yeah, isn't that crazy?
Wow.
My
Okay.
sister's allergic to eggs, so I'm used to making them without like with applesauce and
Yes, I've heard of
chia
that.
seeds and whatever. So yeah, but yeah, I learned that in like somebody else doing it for a shelter, and I was like, that is brilliant. Because if you need to get your food from a food bank and you have a child with a birthday, how heartrending for a parent,
Yes.
to not be able to provide a cake on your child's birthday. And I've I kind of want to get forward enough financially where I can put a gift card in there. And people always say, "Oh, don't do that. They'll spend the money on whatever." And I'm like, so me giving them money is my karma. What they do with it is theirs.
Yes. And you cannot make that assumption. There are so many people that have just fallen on hard times with intentions and good moral values to do things. To make that
I
assumption is just out of
If
pocket.
1 in 100 people would do the wrong thing, is that a reason not to give 100 people money? No, no,
Right.
it just never is. It's never a good reason to not help.
Nope. I mean, obviously, what we're doing here with Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is the concept of meeting people with that flashlight and the snacks where they're at, because someone will listen to this podcast or one of the clips from it when they are struggling and dealing with grief and needing to know that they are not alone. That someone out here understands what they're going through. And there will be a mom that will listen to this and go, okay, I can figure this out. If Stephanie was able to get to the other side of this, maybe she'll reach out to you. Maybe they'll message you and say, I need some more details on what this looks like. Because sometimes you'll hear these broad strokes of statements and need to understand that day by day unpacking of that and how to get there. And that it is a day-to-day process. We'll look back and go, okay, that was 3 years ago. But remembering each one of those days and each one of those moments and each one of those seconds that built up to start seeing more and more light created that opportunity to be where you're at now. But it doesn't keep you from still having moments of grief. It just shows up
Oh yeah.
differently in life.
Um, I I cry sometimes talking to my doctors when they're like, you know, I was at the I had to go to the doctor in a wheelchair because I had to have a procedure done. And my daughter was pushing me in the wheelchair. And the nurse said, "Oh, is she your only child?"
Mm.
And I said, "She's the only one left. I have one earth side and one on the other side." And she went, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I was like, "Yeah, me too." And I thought, what a stupid thing to say. But that is always what I say. "Oh, thanks, me too," because I want to change the subject because I'll talk about David's life all day. I'll talk about how when he was 4 years old, he ate 6 ears of corn. The little boy was starving. I don't know, but how he always knew how to talk to women. My mom did elder care, and she had a 94-year-old woman that lived with her and a 70-year-old woman, I think. And my son would rub their hands and he'd say, Nana, I don't want to sit in the kitchen with my sister. I want to stay here with my darlings. They're my darlings.
David was smooth.
Yeah. And they would take him to their room and give him candy. He
He
knew.
knew. He
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah. I would get so mad at him and say, David, Jack Carlisle Dawson. And he'd say, Mommy, you're so beautiful. I'd get so flustered I forgot what I was mad about.
Yes.
So I'll talk about David all day. I don't like talking about the day he died. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'll talk about everything else. I'll talk about his funeral. I told his friends, I wanted my mom to do the service and for his funeral. And so we did it at a hotel instead of at a church rather than get in a pastor's way. And the hotel was owned by the company that he worked for. So they offered us a comped room for
Oh,
the night.
okay.
And they gave us room 420. So when my son's high school friends got to his funeral, I said that David was there. And they said, do you think so, Mama? And I said, the hotel gave us room 420. And they started laughing and like, that's your son, Mama. I
Oh,
said,
wow.
yeah.
What was the significance of 420?
It's a marijuana joke.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm a federal government
Yeah,
employee.
yeah,
I
and most
should know
people don't,
anyway.
you know, the people that know. In the 70s, school got out at 4, so at 4:20 was light up time, and the kids have always used it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they say 4:20, and yeah, and like I said, David had hypertension and ADD, and he had to self-medicate. And
Oh,
that's a really
wow.
good self-medication for that. And I
But
tried to be and my parents, my parents were hippies. I was 12 years old before I knew not everybody's mom and dad smoked pot.
I mean, there's something to be said about what grows out of the ground and has a purpose versus things that we have created and how it impacts the body. And I'll just leave it
Mhm.
at that. So 420 was a ringer. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, yeah. And your body is built with cannabis receptors that are for pain. And
Yeah.
I live in Minnesota where it's legal, and that's all I can get for pain because I go to Mayo Clinic, and Mayo Clinic doesn't do pain medication. So I get legal marijuana. I don't smoke it. I
Hmm.
take tablets or chew gummies, but that is what I get for pain relief.
And it's better,
Unfortunately,
healthier.
yeah, it is better for you. But if I get enough to really help with the pain, I just go to sleep. I'm so dull. I just take a nap. I'm like, oh, because the pain is gone. So your whole body relaxes. And it's like, now I need a little nap.
Well,
So,
thank you for not being nappy while we talk today.
oh, yeah. I took one beforehand, which is probably why my hair is just terrible. Also, I was just with my grandchildren and they all have straight hair and I have curly hair. So they have to comb it. They try
Oh,
to get it smooth.
you look
They
fine.
try so hard. So I said, Bama, I just can't get your hair smooth. It just won't get smooth.
So I've asked a lot of questions. Was there any, I want to give space for maybe something I didn't ask that you felt like we should speak about or was
Um,
important or in mind to cover?
I do just want to say that I think it's awesome that you do this. And this is obviously your act of service, you know, giving back to the grieving community. And like I said, I married badly, so I don't know what it's like to be a widow, but I know what it's like I would watch my daughter-in-law grieve.
Hmm.
So I know from the outside how hard that is. And I learned a lot about sibling grief. My
Oh,
kids' birthdays were, or they still are, January 25th and 27th. And they always celebrated their birthdays together their whole lives. And that's so hard on my daughter to not have her
yes.
birthday buddy and best friend. And David would always say, KK is my best friend. She's my best friend. And, his wife was his best friend and his daughter was, my son probably had 90 best friends and he meant it with every single one of them. He was a lover, his heart was huge and every one of his best friends was his best friend. So was his wife, so was his sister. But watching her grieve her little brother was heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And for her, her active service was taking care of her brother's kids while we all healed. But my daughter-in-law had to go back to work, and she stopped working after they had the third child, and he dropped out of school somewhere in there too, and just they were more of a traditional family for a while that way, I guess. But then when David died, she had to go to work, and she asked us to move in with them, and we took care of the kids. But she had the baby because I can't lift, and yeah, that was her active service for her brother, was to take care of her brother's kids. And
Nice.
she's still super attached, so it is nice that we get those whole weekends with them together. She graduated from college in 2019, and she needs to start grad school, but the pandemic happened and her brother died and a lot of bad things have happened. So we're not there yet, but
Right.
My health greatly decreased with grieving. And I, we talked about how you really can't eat when you're grieving.
Yes.
And I didn't. And the first 3 weeks after my son died, I think I was living on 1 or 2 protein shakes a day. And I was getting my daughter-in-law couldn't eat either. And she was breastfeeding a baby. And I was just really encouraging her to drink protein shakes also. Neither one of us were eating. But in those first 3 weeks, she lost 20 pounds and I gained 20 pounds, drinking 2 protein shakes a day, And then I think I gained 20 more moving to Minnesota and everything. And my back is so bad that extra weight has really put me in a bad way. And I have to walk with a walker all the time now. And then I had COVID too, and it did a number on my lungs, but masked all the time except for on the plane. I took it off on the plane for 2 minutes to have some water. Got stinking COVID.
Oh.
But she's been taking care of me. She took care of her brother's kids, and then she took care of me, and hopefully she'll get to grad school eventually. So, but that's a gift too, for us to be able to rebuild our lives together with my son and my mom dying so close together. And then we had a little bit of, I have a growth in my chest right here, right now. I had bronchitis and I had an x-ray for that and they found it. And right now it's 2 by 2.9 centimeters, I believe they said it was.
Okay.
And they don't really do surgery until it gets to be 5. They don't think it's a tumor. They think it's a cyst.
Okay.
But we don't know unless it grows, and they decide to take it out. But it's a very intense surgery. And then 4 to 5 days in the hospital and then 6 weeks recovery time. And my daughter's like, "You're not going to die, are you?" And I was like, "No, you and my sister could not handle that with your brother dying and then Nana. No, we couldn't do that. I can't die yet. We're not up for another one,
It becomes
We're
a
just
lot to
not ready."
bear.
Yeah. But I think I'm less scared to die with David dying. Isn't that the weirdest thing?
No, it's not. I can relate to that. When my late husband Mark died, I was like, well, okay, we all got to go this way. It wasn't like I was jumping up, here's my ticket, I'm done. But it was just like
Right.
I embraced the reality of it in a different way that was never possible before. That I see it as this is part of this life experience this is part of the human experience, that one day I will not be here. And thank you. What I am wanting to do, and the board members and everyone that supports widowhood, is to be those people helping those on that road and showing up with a snack and a drink to know that you're not alone and there are other people. We are pointing the light to other people to help you get through this journey, because it is something we do all have to experience in one form or fashion. Either we are going to be grieving the loss of the loved one, or we will be the loved one that someone is grieving. It is the way life goes. And I loved my husband and still love him now dearly. We were together 32 years. I thought we lived in Pennsylvania and they had this Bloomsburg fair every year. I thought we were going to be in our 80s in double scooters going to the fair and having grandkids on the back of the scooters and just doing that. And he died at 54. that is not what I thought was going to happen. And
Yeah.
you're right. My community showed up in a way that I expected. But as I continued on this journey and speaking with other widows and widowers, they showed up in a phenomenal way that is not normal what most people receive, but what we should. We should receive that level of support. And the reason why I wanted to have these podcasts and these conversations for friends of people that had a loved one lost, that they would listen to one of these conversations and know it's okay just to show up, like you said, and just sit there in the hole with them and be quiet. Or you
Yeah.
don't always have to talk about death. We may need to talk about the grass needs to be cut or other different stuff. And I don't need you to ghost me. I don't need you to not say this person's name that I love. I need you more than ever to be here, not to slip away. This is hard. And
Yeah.
when I talk to some of my siblings about how lonely people are during this time, it boggles their mind to think that we just don't know how to do better. And I want to help educate people to do
Yeah.
better and to show up and to be there.
I think that we have lost something beautiful with our loss of our small town communities and even small church families. Everything's mega churches,
Mm,
and so much online. And I was thinking about this the other day, and it's just kind of weird because we both have a social media presence and try to help as what we can from there. But most people are on social media for the likes. They're there for the clicks, for the laughs, and we're not. We're there for support and education.
I
So
don't
it's
know. I've connected with so many people. Like when I first started doing this, my daughter said, "Mom, you're running widowhood like a business." I was like, "Well, that's kind of how my brain works." And she goes, "You got to make people laugh sometimes." And some of that has connected me with people that there is a huge presence that I had never even thought of. On TikTok, the amount of widows and widowers that are there. Like if you go to some of these social medias, I'm learning this. What you put in is what you start seeing more of. If you're
right.
listening to this podcast and you go, well, the people on this particular platform are all my family members and they don't know how to show up. I encourage you to switch to a different platform, put in the topic you're looking for, and you will start to connect with people that are looking for some of the same things you're looking for. Whether you're looking for on Pinterest to get better food recipes, or like your support group that you mentioned that was on Facebook. I think it becomes what we make it to be. And that is what we learn to get out of it. Like some people can say like the whole internet is bad, but it's like, what do you
Oh no.
use it? What do you use it for? And I think the ability
Right.
to see that changes.
Yeah. And I love my clicks. I love my likes. I love the people that I've gotten to talk to and stuff. It's just kind of weird that it's not my it's not my main goal. I love that I get them. I love the shares. But my goal is if somebody needs it, that's the only reason I want clicks and likes. Because if somebody needs it, I
Yes,
want it to flash across their screen. But yeah, but I get so many emails and they're like, oh, well, you do this, so you must want to build do these click funnels. And I'm like, no,
on click
no,
what?
I
No,
don't want to do that.
no, I
It's a
want
whole
that one
different,
brand. I want that one person
yeah,
that says, I read this and now I have an emotional support dog. I read this
right.
and now I see a therapist. I read this and I participated in the Walk for Love event. I read this and I know I'm not alone. That
Yeah,
is why for me.
yeah. And even if they see your posts 12 times, but that 13th one is like, I needed that today.
Yes,
Today, that is the message that needed to cross. That's what I'm there for.
yes,
And I might never know. I mean, sometimes people are kind enough to tell me you made a difference in my life today. Thank you. But most of the time, you don't know. And I'm okay
you
with that,
don't.
you
Right.
know? And it's enough to, my intention is to spread love and support. And if I did it, then yay, I succeeded. I don't need to know that I did it. You know what I mean? I
Right.
know in here because love is always a gift,
Mm,
even when that love is on another side. Love is always a gift. Does that make sense? I don't know.
it does. You don't put you put if you put it out there, it's going to stick somewhere. You may never know about
Right.
it because going back to that person, it can just be so tired they can hardly grab that rope. People are apprehensive about writing or responding, but you know that it impacts someone. I have
Yeah.
asked you a lot of questions. Any questions of me? Oh,
I've had
didn't.
so many, and I wish I would have written them down as we went because I thought, oh, I wonder how she got interested in this. But I don't at the moment, but I
Okay.
reserve the right to when I finally get my own podcast started, I'm going to call you.
Oh, thank
You're
you.
going to do it on the
Yes.
other end.
Okay,
Okay.
absolutely. I don't mind
Okay.
someone
Because
else driving.
um, the only reason I haven't started yet is the weight gain from the COVID. I know it's stupid. I know it's stupid, but it has halted me. I don't want
Everybody's
my
got
face
some
out
COVID
everywhere.
weight. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. I used to have this neighbor, and she would always say, "You girls are always worried about your weight." And I was like, "You are a girl." You know? And she's like, "You girls are always worried about your weight." She's like, "You are beautiful. Don't you know you're beautiful?" And it's like, I didn't say I wasn't beautiful. I said I was chubby.
One has nothing to do with the other. I have two final questions for you, Stephanie.
Okay.
If you were to pick any age range or portion in your life, what age would you pick and what would you tell yourself?
I think I would have to go back to pretty small, just to know that some bad things were going to happen, but I was going to be okay. And hold tight to that mustard seed.
And what gives you
I don't think I
joy?
would
Oh,
try
I'm
to
sorry.
change anything,
Oh, okay.
but I don't think I would try to change anything because I don't think that I can. But
Hmm.
I do. Part of being religious for me is learning about other religions because I don't think any of them are all right. And I don't think any of them are all wrong. I think they all have some moments of essential truth. But there's the one school of thought that says that everything that happens to you in this life you ordered before you came down. And
Mm.
I'm like, no, I didn't. I know me pretty well. And
Denied.
I know this is not what I was looking for. I'll take it since this is what you gave me. But I know I didn't order this. I'm sending this sandwich back.
Oh my gosh. So you're saying like 4 or 5 year old Stephanie when you say really young?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Because yeah. My mom had a really hard time dealing with my sister's death, and then I had another sister. Like Lisa died in June of 72, and my sister Jen was born in April of 73.
Mm.
So it was really close in there, and I think she wasn't ready, and I think that was to the detriment of me and my sister. But it was 1973, and I wanted more than anything in the world a Baby Alive doll. Remember those?
And
I
you got
wanted a
one.
Baby Alive doll more than anything. And I didn't get one. And my mom said, "No, I got you a real live baby." So Jenny became a box baby. I used to cart her around in a cardboard box with a blanket. I have pictures of me dragging her around the house in a cardboard box, and she's got a sheet or a blanket in the bottom. So she was
Wow.
always my baby. I was 5. I would say, would tell my kids, your Aunt Jen was my first kid. I was
Mm.
only 5. I wasn't ready, but I made some mistakes, but she turned out okay.
Nice.
I
So
made
what
mistakes
give
with the other ones too.
oh girl, who
So yeah,
hasn't?
I think it's important to know that love is going to be okay. And I didn't always feel loved as a child. My mom was very emotionally absent, and when she died, her best friend said, "Your mom was such a mom. She was just so motherly." And my sister and I looked at each other and said, "To who?" Because it wasn't to us. And I loved her the way she was, but she wasn't a mom.
It's interesting how we people are put a different spin on who someone is when they're no longer breathing instead of just accepting them for who they were.
Yeah. I honestly think that having my mom die healed my relationship with her a lot.
I can see
Um,
that.
and kind of freaking out, like thinking how old she was, and I'm now older than she was when I thought that, that she was so old,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, and just like, yeah. And like, I remember thinking that she was so old when my kids were little, but I became a grandparent at 43 and she became a grandmother at 40. So obviously the times, she was, younger than I am now when she was doing stuff with my kids. And I'm like, wow,
Perspective.
you know? Yeah. And she didn't know either, she didn't know
Mm-mm.
how to be a mom. Boomers were born to a whole different generation,
Yes. So my
leave the kids alone,
mm, mm.
you know?
But I think what you told younger Stephanie shows up in your life every day now, from what I hear.
I try, yeah. Some days I try harder than others, but um, sometimes I have to stay alone in my room because I'm not worth talking to. But I do make a concerted effort that what I put out in there is love, and I don't like when I get frustrated, and I do, like with my grandkids, because my time with them is precious to me, and but I only had two kids, and they were a lot, and being around five kids for 2 days can get to be a lot. It's
It's
and
doses. We don't
sometimes
need
your tempers
everything at
get
once.
short.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what gives you
yeah.
joy?
All the things that I mentioned before are my little glimmers of hope. Really good burger, a really well made margarita on a hot summer day, which I have not done yet this year, and I'm running out of time.
Yes, you are.
So I know. My grandchildren, they are the joy of my heart. And my daughter and my sister, with life being the way it is, we don't talk every day and everything, but we play a game together on Facebook. And so whenever I get a thing from her, I know she's thinking about me and I play the game back, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, my life is full of moments of joy. My life is so joyful. I only can be sad for moments. I'm still sad for those moments. I've said that I'm one step away from a Pollyanna, but it's a pretty grumpy step.
Well, thank you for shedding some light and having this conversation with me. I
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me. Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed being here very much.
You are so welcome. You have a good
And I will
evening.
see,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
go
you
ahead.
too. I will talk to you soon. All right. Thank you. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
So I told you it was a good conversation. I mean, Stephanie's ability to reconcile life and death, I cannot even fathom being 4 years old and seeing my sister in a casket wearing the same clothing that I'm wearing. If that was not a pivotal moment in her life to change how she thought people should show up during death, I am so grateful for every person's life that she has impacted. I am sorry for the person that you have lost that has driven you to this conversation, but I appreciate you making us part of your hood and allowing us to be with you on this journey. You are not alone. And I am open to hear from you. Please email me at widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com to share your journey, make a suggestion for a podcast topic, and you are more than welcome to give a donation because we are a 501c3 registered nonprofit. Thank you for being here with us. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.